Today we're creating stunning ornaments on a budget that are festive and under $5. Welcome to the Chic Show. Today's 5 Under 5 playlist is hosted by Emily at Farm Charm Chic and the Loft Home Decor with Karen. Their channels are in the description box below, along with the talented creators on the playlist. This is a napkin that I got in Sonnet's Maker's box, and I'm going to be using one of the quarters of the napkin. So this is a Highland cow, and we're going to make it more Christmassy, while this was actually more of a fall look. So I removed one of the plies of the napkin, and now I'm using this little piece from Summer from Dollar General, and I'm going to paint that middle piece, that middle part, with white chalk paint. Once the paint had dried, I added on some Mod Podge to this white part, and I'm going to let that dry completely as well. Now that the Mod Podge is dry, I'm going to add on my napkin. I'm going to place it exactly where I want it, and then I'm going to put a piece of Teflon on top, and I'm going to use my mini iron to heat up that Mod Podge and reactivate it so that the napkin will adhere with no wrinkles. Once everything had cooled off, I used my finger sander to sand off the excess napkin around that center part. To protect the napkin, and also before I can do this next part, I am going to seal the top of that napkin with more Mod Podge and let it dry completely. Now I'm going to be adding some pieces of rub-on transfer from one of the Christmas IOD releases that I have. I believe this is from the Yuletide rub-on transfer kit from this year, and I just cut a piece that I thought would fit on the top of the cow's head to cover up those fall flowers and make it more Christmassy. I kept adding a couple of pieces here and there just to make sure I got all of that filled in with more of the red berries. And now the Highland cow has more of a Christmassy look. For this project, I'm using some leftover air dry clay that I need to use up. I'm just going to roll it out, and then I'm going to be using a couple of different cookie cutters for this project. I'm also going to be using one of IOD's stamps. So I'm going to ink up the top part of this snowman stamp, and I'm going to stamp it into the clay. I want it to fit inside this cookie cutter. I'm going to place it down onto my clay, and I'm going to gently roll over it with my rolling pin so that it will make an indentation with that black ink. Now I'm going to use that cookie cutter, and I'm just going to cut out the clay around the snowman. I'm going to repeat this process with this holly leaf stamp. One thing that I didn't show you was that I used a straw to poke a hole in the top of both of these ornaments so that I can add a hanger later. Once that was all done, I let them dry overnight, and then I added a simple velvet ribbon for each of them. For For these ornaments, I'm using some of these plastic ornaments from Hobby Lobby. I got them on clearance, so they were well under $5 for the entire pack, and I'm only using two. I'm using some Fusion paint in Champness. This is my favorite blue color, and I'm going to be painting just one side of each of these ornaments. Now that both ornaments are painted, the paint is going to be on the back side, and once it's completely dry, I'm going to be applying a rub-on transfer from IOD's Kitschy Christmas from this year. Once I have applied the rub-on transfer, I do go ahead and burnish it down with that backing paper. Felt like I needed to add something inside each of the ornaments. So for the snowman ornament, I'm going to be adding a little bit of Epsom salt to look like snow. For the little girl and the Christmas tree lights, I'm going to add some of these little lights from my little Christmas section at Hobby Lobby. I just cut off a section of the lights and then I put those down inside the ornament as well. I think the snow and the lights finish off these ornaments perfectly. For this ornament, I'm using some of these ornament blanks that I actually thrifted, but I believe they were originally from Michael's. So there was a whole package of them. And I'm just going to be painting it with Fusion paint, and I can't remember the color here, but I'm going to paint both sides. Now I'm going to be using a little bit of watered down white acrylic paint, and I'm just going to splatter paint onto the front of this ornament. Now I'm going to go back with a little bit of a wet wipe, and I'm just going to dab back at some of those larger spots, and it's going to look more like snow. And again, I'm using this little rub-on transfer from IOD's Kitschy Christmas, and I'm going to rub that down onto my ornament once that paint has completely dried. I had this little mini snowflake garland, so I'm cutting apart these little snowflakes, and I'm going to add those to the ornament as well. I'm going to be using one at the top to cover up that hole. Once I have those glued down, now I'm ready for the next step. For this step, I'm going to be using some of these fillable ball ornaments from Dollar General, but I'm only going to be using half of one of them. And I'm going to be gluing that onto the top of this ornament so that it looks more like a snow globe. I'm going to be using clear Gorilla Glue around the edge of the ornament. Every snow globe needs a little bit of snow, so I'm going to use some more of that Epsom salt, and I'm just going to put a spoonful of it right in the center of the ornament so that it doesn't touch the glue. And then I'm going to put that half of that fillable ornament on top of the glue and just let it sit until it completely dries. Once it's completely dry, it's ready to add a ribbon hanger. For the last ornament today, I'm going to be using some of my IOD stamps, but you could use any stamps that you had. I'm going to start with some of these little Christmas trees that were in one of the IOD releases from this year, and I'm using a blue ink pad from Hobby Lobby. I'm stamping these onto plain tissue paper. For the rest of the tissue paper, I'm using the blue ink, and I'm using the ephemeral type stamps from IOD. And again, you could use any kind of Christmassy stamps that you have. These aren't even Christmas, and I'm using those just because everything is in French. So I'm just going to be inking that up and stamping that all over the tissue paper. These are some clear ornaments that I got from Walmart, and I took them outside and gave them a quick coat of white spray paint. Now I added on some Mod Podge, and I'm adding on the tissue paper. I cut the tissue paper into quarters. Then I made some relief cuts in the quarters so that I could work this around my round ornament. And once I get a section down, I'm going to coat it again with more Mod Podge. Once it's completely covered, I set it in a cup to dry, and then I flipped it over after a little while so the bottom could dry as well. I used some rub and buff on the hanger part and then added some velvet ribbons, and I love how these turned out. I really hope that you've enjoyed today's video, and I hope that you'll check out our host channels in the description box as well as the playlist for more inspiration. Here's another video I think you might like. Thanks so much for watching. Remember to share the chic. Bye now.